Well, it's Saturday the 24th of September. This is episode 2234 of 301 Permanently Moved to Online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded and edited by me, at the JMO. Last year, I wrote about what was going to happen when the Queen dies. I still stand by it. The last 12 days of state-mandated mourning has been difficult to describe to people outside of the UK. Amidst the biggest crisis since the Second World War, the country was put on pause. Here are some things that happened. Protesters were arrested. The establishment reacted with apoplexy that any Republican could even exist. The longest queue in recorded history formed along the Thames to see the Queen's coffin lying in state. And the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsley Hoyle, said live on TV that the Queen's funeral was the most important event the world will ever see. The public were also asked not to leave marmalade sandwiches in the memorial garden. The more you believe in the institution of the Crown, the more real the Queen becomes. For 72 years, generations of the Queen's subjects have sung to God to save her and crush the rebellious Scots. Sung in the boarding schools our politicians and media elite attended, before football matches and before wars. But that anthem now has new words. God Save the King, we sing, making real the new inhabitant of the non-statutory corporation Sol, King Charles III. The Queen was, at the end of the day, just a human being, yet at the moment of her ascension to the throne, through the glamour of arcane ritual and capital P power, she embodied the materiality of a declining empire, the state made flesh. This is why I went to the funeral. I wanted to experience it. I wanted to see the state with all its power ritualized and actualized with my own eyes. 10 minutes to sunrise, I got the train into town, meeting friends before walking the length of the route to find a spot to watch the proceedings. The walk set the tone for the day. I have never felt more like a prole than when I first encountered the wall of steel raised around the funeral route. I've seen big temporary barriers erected during protests in London before, but these giant green metal walls were far more permanent and imposing, guarded by stony-faced coppers stood stock still. These walls too were another manifestation of the state, one that had said, no, you cannot see or go beyond this point. Yes, things are happening over there, but you, prole, are to stay over here. About 8:30, after an hour's walk through London, we found a spot in Knightsbridge, right at the front, by the barriers, opposite the Oriental Hotel along South Carriage Drive. Every 100 metres along the road stood a copper, not one of them in high vis that I've come to expect from the modern constabulary. Instead, they were dressed in crisp white shirts, body armour and helmets, dressed more or less the same at the funeral as they would have done at the coronation. I wondered if there was some sort of aesthetic symmetry in play. With no big screens to follow the proceedings, we followed the events on our phones. Second-hand audio of the BBC's coverage blasted out by distorted loudspeakers, overlapped by the sound from smartphones. With the phone network creaking, each device suffered different amounts of latency. A moment of techno high strangeness occurred as live-streamed audio bled well into the beginning of the 2-minute silence. Our 5-hour wait, fueled by thermos coffee and packed sandwiches, wore on. The crowd behind us grew, and the hotel staff and guests trickled out onto balconies, eventually as packed as we were down on the roadside. We heard it before we saw it. From Wellington Arch, a ripple of cheers and clapping swelled along the crowd. The moment came and 1,000 cameras went up. Flowers launched over our heads into the road, and I got to see what I came to see. A wand, an orb, a crown, placed upon the coffin of a dead monarch. All the powers of the state, all its glamour, its violence, its cruelty, its history, reduced, compressed into physical objects. For 5 or so seconds, the artefacts representing not only the Second Elizabethan age, but the end of an empire, the invention of the United Kingdom, and an era of the post-war settlement sped past. A moment in time, a moment in history. I saw a hearse leaving a city and a country in decline for a literal castle in Berkshire. For 12 days, the day-to-day running of the country had been put on hold. Since the great unpausoning, our new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, the last of the neoliberals, has made moves. Markets have slid, and the pound has fallen. The reality of a red, white and blue Brexit and post-pandemic Britain all hitting home. Last year, I said that interregnum would be a period of deranged manufactured consent and statue discourse. Keep calm and carry on amidst rising fascism, supply chain crisis, empty shelves, channel drownings, rivers of shite and rapid inflation. In the event, I underestimated the scale of the crisis. In the coming months, the British state and the state of Britain, entwined closer than at any time in the last half-century, will begin to unspool. War, blackouts, earthquakes, and the collapse of the NHS are all on the cards. The 21st century has arrived in Britain with the passing of a crown. The Carolingian age of air has begun in the kingdom.